from what I remember about school, when you're in school, people treat you like you're dumb, basically. They treat you like you don't know, like you don't even really have the capacity to learn. Like you're kind of having just stuff just jammed into your head.
Hello and welcome to the More Than Just a School podcast, where we look at teens and learning through the lens of an alternative style of education, one that puts the kids in charge of exactly what they learn and how they learn it. I am your host, Karen Locke-Cope. I've got a master's degree in education, a bachelor's degree in human development, and a whole lot of curiosity about how to get teenagers the best learning environment possible so they grow into successful, fulfilled, engaged people. When our kids needed something different in their education, my husband Ben and I found this model and immediately noticed amazing changes. But when we tried to tell friends and relatives and people who care about our sons why their new school was different, we couldn't. We didn't have the words. This podcast changes all that. Come along on our quest to find out what works in secondary education and what doesn't, and why. So welcome to episode 3 of More Than Just a School. This one I called How to Get Your Teen to Listen to You. Because I, even though this is a podcast exploring a particular alternative education style for teenagers and tweens as well, I would say, anyway, anybody from 10 and up, this is a model that works really, really well for kids of those ages. I guess what I'm learning about the Northstar model is that it is incredibly useful in family systems as well, like incredibly useful. I guess in our family, this is something that we have done all along, what I'm going to talk about today, but it's not something that I think it typically happens in our education system, which is why I started this episode. I chose the quote from today's guest to put at the top of the episode, which I did, which references that in school, kids are basically stuffed with information. Like the assumption is that kids show up with as a tabula rasa, a blank page that is just meant to be written on. And that may be the attitude of the administrators and the people who create the schools. Like, for example, some of our public schools are kind of have this attitude, but anybody who works with kids for more than 3 seconds knows that they have their own attitudes. They have their own ideas already. They've got their own questions. They've got the things that they're curious about. And so while I guess I'm connecting these two ideas, what works in school that's one idea, with how to get your teenager to listen to you, that's the second idea, because this is where I really feel like they intersect. I actually have a story to share about this. So a couple of weeks ago, I was out walking in my neighborhood and I ran into a neighbor of mine, somebody who I've known for a long time, somebody who knows what I'm doing and knows that like I work with kids. And so I actually have a podcast called We Turned Out Okay, which is for parents of young children. And so he's got teenagers, this friend of mine, and he doesn't, I think knowing that I work with kids was enough for him, basically, because until the advent of this podcast, I didn't really work with teenagers or had not studied teenagers. In fact, my degree goes to, I have a master's degree that includes a teaching certificate that goes up to age 9 or grade 3. And when my oldest turned 10, I thought, oh my gosh, like I'm in trouble now. I don't know how to deal with 10-year-olds. But anyway, my neighbor doesn't know that. Like what he knows is, okay, here's Karen. She works with kids. And we ran into each other one day in the neighborhood and he shared with me that his daughter had just been caught cheating again at school and that they were going to have it out tonight. There was going to be this big confrontation at their dinner table. And he was basically saying like, she's in such trouble. And at the same time, as he's angry, you can tell that he's also incredibly worried. How is this girl in just a few short years going to be capable of going out into the world? And on top of that, is she going to even listen to them tonight at the dinner table? Like they're going to have a lot to say. Is she going to be contributing to that conversation? And how will she? Will she be shouting? Will she be freaking out? Will she be incredibly dramatic? Will she be defiant? Like he had all of these fears that just showed in his whole bearing on this day. And I basically, all I could offer was a hug. I mean, I wished I had more for him. And I've been thinking on that for quite a while now. I would say, I said at the beginning, this happened a few weeks ago. I think it's more like it's a few months ago now. I'm recording this in July, and this was probably in April or May that this happened. And the reason it sticks out for me is because that night I remember going home to my family's dinner time, where we just had, and this is very typical in our family, we have fabulous dinner times where there's a lot of laughing, but there's a lot of serious talk about like big issues. And I can't remember exactly what the discussion was that night, but it was big. I think it started off with a class that the kids take at Baystate Learning Center, which is the school that my boys attend in the model that's in the Northstar model. And all this past semester, they were able to take a class called Science Fiction Social Issues. And what they would do is, it was a 2-hour-long class. They would typically watch a Star Trek Next Generation or a Dark Mirror or some other science fiction show. And then they would watch that for the first 45, 50 minutes. And then they would spend the rest of the time talking about one particular, usually the instructor who her name's Laura Fokina. And I'm so excited about this. I have an interview coming up with her that you guys are going to love. She would guide the discussion, but she didn't insist that only her topics were the ones to be covered or whatever. And it just, the kids would bring home so much from that. And so this was a night, I can't remember exactly what the reference was, but we were having this mind-blowing discussion about like humanity and technology and like all of these big ideas. Cause teenagers are really trying to figure out, what is this world that they live in, and what does it look like, and how can they function in it, you know? And I am sitting at the dinner table on this particular night, and I was sad because I finally shared, you know, I talked to our friend in the neighborhood. I talked to a friend in the neighborhood. I didn't identify this person to my sons, but and he is just feeling really upset because their conversation at their dinner table tonight is very different from ours. Theirs is a big debate, a big discussion. Their daughter's gotten in trouble for cheating on an exam. And I said to them, I just want to say how thankful I am that how my heart, well, first of all, how my heart goes out to them. And second of all, how thankful I am that our conversation at this dinner table tonight has been what it has been, because I think I'm incredibly lucky to be a part of this family system. And I mean, it solicited so much sympathy and empathy for that other family dealing with what they were dealing with. And at the time I just felt so powerless. I really didn't have an answer for him. And he had asked me, can you help me in this situation? And I feel like this podcast kind of is my answer, I guess I would say. Because I think what makes the difference here is the way that we communicate with our teenagers. And I know that my friend down the street loves his daughter, adores his daughter. I mean, he's always talking about like what a spitfire she is and how, you know, he's always got a certain pride in his voice when he speaks about her. And so he wasn't just saying to me, oh my God, she's going to get it, she's in so much trouble. He was saying to me, I'm so worried about her. I don't know how to make this better for her. Like, I don't know how to help in this situation. And to me, it really all comes back to the idea of communication and how this teenage daughter's. So I actually teach this a lot when I'm speaking with parents of young children. Our kids are doing the best that they can. Like, within their world, they're doing the absolute best that they can. If you keep a child up until 11 o'clock at night, a young child, if you keep them up really, really late, and then you expect them to sit through, I don't know, some long dinner where there's literally nothing to do but listen to the adults drone on, and the food is that, you know, stuff that they don't like, and it's 11 o'clock at night, you're not going to have a happy 3 or 4-year-old, right? And if that child manages to only whine at you quietly, you know, manages to communicate their discomfort in a way that doesn't involve like the whole table, right? They're doing the best that they can. And even if that child melts down or freaks out or throws something or has an all-out tantrum right on the floor, they are still doing the best that they can. And I live with 2 teenagers, a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old. And so long ago, I figured out how to move past that, like, what happens now that they're 10 kind of thing, right? The thing that I think is so interesting is it's very similar with teenagers as it was with 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds or 3-year-olds. They still have this desire, this need. It's not even a desire. It's an urgent need to communicate and to be heard. And they will do whatever they can to be heard, whatever they need to be heard. And so when I think about our neighbor down the street, what I think about is, if you take it back to that level, she's doing the best that she can, right? So maybe, I don't know this for sure because I haven't spoken with her, but maybe she is cheating on tests because she's feeling all this pressure to get a good grade, and she knows full well she hasn't studied, and she's not going to get a good grade unless she cheats on this test. I'm not saying that it's good reason. I realize it's very, very faulty logic, as I'm sure you do, but maybe that's what she's thinking, you know? She's doing the best that she can. And if her parents are going to read her the riot act at dinner, that's a kind of communication that isn't going to encourage her to listen to them. Like, that's really the point I want to get to here is that the way to get your teenager to listen to you is to listen to your teenager in a really unbiased, unchallenging way. And I'm not, I guess, you know, I can hear you going like, well, wait a second. What if they yell at me? What if they throw things? What if they call me names? Those things are not allowed. That's not listening. That's abusing, right? So there's a line here of respect. And I would also argue that if you're going to expect respect, then you need to offer respect. And so to this neighbor, I think now what I would say is, having learned about this particular alternative style of secondary level education, which is all about relationships. It's all about the relationship between the teenager and the teachers, between the teenager and the parents, the teenagers and the volunteers. I mean, it's such a cool model for that. In fact, coming up, you'll hear our guest today talking about one specific teacher that he has who is a learner, just like our guest is a learner. Like, just because you're a teacher doesn't mean that you have all the knowledge. And that's really why I started at the top with that quote that I did, because would we expect that teenagers don't know anything and that we have to teach them everything? We are not going to get a teenager that listens to us because they can't. I mean, they're if they're doing the best that they can, their whole like biology is all set up to be more and more and more independent. And that's, it's such an unheard message these days. Like it's not something that we typically think about. We think about how how can we get them to know everything that they need to know, right, before they graduate? How can we get them to apply to the right colleges? How can we get them to know the value of money? How can we get them to go out and get a job? I mean, like, there's all these things, but in that might be getting lost the idea that we need to ask them first. We need to ask them what they want. We need to ask them what they're thinking about, and only when we do that will we earn their respect, which in turn earns our respect on their parts. And only when we do that, when we listen to them, do they then open themselves up to listening to us. And I did a lot of like internet searching to find out, in the coming weeks, in the coming podcast episodes there, I'm going to get into a lot of research about play and about children and about learning and teenagers and all that kind of cool stuff. But today I wanted to start with something like, I thought I would Google what you might Google if you were trying to get your teenager to listen to you. So I Googled something like how to get teenagers to listen to you. And I came across many, many, many resources, and including this one that I'm about to mention. So this one is called, I wrote it down, but I don't have it up right now. So I'm going to link to it. I can't tell you the author's name though, but I can tell you that this was in Psychology Today. This is a Psychology Today article entitled 9 Tips for Communicating with Your Teenage Son. And this article, none of the 9 tips for communicating with your teenage son was listening to your teenage son. Communication is a two-way street. And if you are not listening to your teenager, you can sure as heck bet they're not going to listen to you. You know, they are just not. They don't work that way. They are not thinking, unless they feel like they're being heard, they are not going to be capable of truly listening and understanding. Because they'll always have a reason. They'll be like, well, you know, you say that, but that's not what I see you doing, or you say that, but I don't believe it's true, kind of a thing. And eventually, if we keep pounding away at it, they will stop saying those things, but they'll still think them. You know, they'll still think, oh, my mother doesn't know exactly what she's talking about at all. She's clueless about my world, and the only way to learn about their world is to listen to them, right? So, So that's, I guess I do want to bring you into this conversation, you know, right now, because I think it's a really good one. It is with my own child. It's with my 17-year-old son. His name is Max. And I wanted to bring up all of this stuff about communication and respect and listening and stuff like that, because that is his favorite thing about Baystate Learning Center and about the Northstar model, is that he feels listened to and respected. And I'm looking forward to letting you get in there and hear from him in his own words. And let me just say that is how, like, this, everything that I've been talking about, that's how you can get your teen to listen to you. You have to listen to them first, right? If you need more help with this though, if your teenager is withdrawn, anxious, defiant, or sneaky, and you just don't know how to connect with them or how to reach them, you can go to morethanjustaschool.com for the 5 ways to reach your teen checklist and video guide. It may seem like you could never get your child back, but it is possible. And this guide teaches you a process that you can put into place right away so you can reach your child, connect with your child, and bond with your child. So if you worry, they've gone beyond where I can reach them, the video and checklist in this guide provides a roadmap so you can reach your teen and truly connect. And now let's hear from Max. Hello and welcome to the podcast about Baystate Learning Center and the cool kids who come here and telling their stories and telling their parents' stories and helping everybody understand why this place is different and why it's awesome. And today I am so excited because I'm sitting here with my own personal success story. My oldest son, Max, has been coming to Baystate Learning Center now for about, 9 months?
About?
Yeah, something like 9
since
months.
September.
Since September. And he's here to kind of talk about what his life was like before and what it's like now. So welcome to the podcast, Max.
Hey. Yeah, so I guess
I was going to say, start with
what it was like before. So I guess I've been homeschooled a lot longer than I've been coming to Baystate. I've been homeschooled since about midway through second grade, and I'm like 17 now, and I started going to Baystate last September. I guess we'll start with how it was in school. I think you I guess we'll start with, it's pretty much my first grade teacher.
And again, I want to just interject and say we're not going to do names. We're not going to do names of towns. I mean, public school works for some kids. It doesn't work for all kids. It didn't work for you. So your second grade? Did you say first grade or second grade?
First grade.
First grade teacher.
First grade teacher. I think you mentioned this in the last interview with Sam. She wasn't the greatest teacher. She gave me a ton of homework once while we were going away for vacation. She was just generally crabby and not good. It was bad.
And as a result, so I know this as your parent, what happened was you internalized that. Like you took it as, I'm a bad kid because I've made my teacher angry or unhappy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Not coincidentally, that was the year that you got migraine headaches. You were 6
and
when
night terrors and just weight loss.
You lost 20% of your body weight.
Pretty much the full stress package.
You lost your whole personality. It was like post-traumatic stress syndrome for 6-year-olds, basically, from first grade.
Not a good time.
Yep. And so we saw that, right? We recognized that, and we made a change, and we decided to pull you out of school and start homeschooling. And what was that like? I guess that's a really good question. So the first question to ask.
I mean, to be completely honest, I don't really remember a ton about how I was like feeling in school, besides like, knowing that I had all that stuff happen to me and some vague memories. So I don't have a ton to really compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the few times that I've been in a school-like environment since then, not counting Baystate, because I wouldn't even really call Baystate like a school-like environment. But
it's got classrooms, it's got a shop.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Teachers, whatever.
It's got an auditorium, it's got a kitchen, it's got teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the few times I've been in a school-like environment, like public school-like environment, since then, I can't imagine spending any more time than I did there, because I think I would have gone fully insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And from our perspective, you as a person really disappeared.
Yeah.
You stopped being you. You stopped laughing. You stopped asking questions. You stopped sharing stuff because I think you felt like, well, I'm trapped here and there's no way out. And you just shut your little 7-year-old self down, 6-year-old self down. And it was so difficult to watch you. So I'm remembering something that happened after you'd been homeschooling. So I should say, first of all, when you started homeschooling, immediately the night terror stopped. Like the last day that you went to school, you didn't have a night terror that night.
Yeah.
So that stopped immediately. You would occasionally have nightmares, because sometimes people have nightmares, but they're very different from night terrors. Yeah. And you started to smile again, and you started to, like, I remember opening up a Harry Potter, kind of store, and you and I would write, like, we would send owl post back and forth to each other because you were really into Harry Potter then, and you started, like, wanting to run around outside, and, like, just, you sort of regained yourself.
Being a kid.
Exactly. You regained yourself. You regained your personality, and you got back to being a kid. And so about maybe a year after you started homeschooling, because other things came back online much more slowly.
Yeah. And
the one that I remember most was whenever you would get hurt, your feelings would get hurt. You used to translate it. This was like a school thing, and then for the first year or so afterwards, into physical pain. And so, like, I
still do that sometimes.
It's really hard not to, especially in the moment. But now you can recognize it, right? And I can remember very clearly two things. When we were playing, you were part of a dodgeball like group, so you're playing dodgeball, and you got hit like in the shoulder, and you collapsed to the ground, grabbed your knee and started screaming, "My knee! Oh my God, my knee!" And what was really happening was you were hurt because your feelings were hurt because you knew you'd gotten out. And so you sort of acted like you had a broken knee when in fact the ball didn't even come near your knee. It was more like, but then the other thing I remember is sort of the flip side of that is the day that you said to me, "My feelings are hurt." And you were about 8 years old, and something had happened at, we used to do a little kind of math circle, and something had happened that day at math circle, and you were able to turn to me and say, "My feelings are hurt." And it was like, wow. I mean, it was the first time that you didn't, grab a part of your body and scream in pain. And I don't know, I just think that's really cool. So that was a benefit of leaving school, right? You were able to kind of connect yourself to yourself again. And then that went really, really well. I mean, like for a long time, for a decade or so, you had a good time as a homeschooler, right?
Yeah.
Took classes and... Yeah,
I mean, I think really Baystate isn't like super far from what I've been doing for homeschooling.
But yet
I've always been taking classes.
Yeah.
It's just not been like in like this kind of a system, I guess.
Yeah, but this is different, and I wanted to just shifting into like what your life is like now. So we've seen you, your dad and I have seen you kind of transform almost into a happier kid. I mean, you for a while you were kind of floating along in the sort of like early teenage, whatever, stew of angst and like all the social things that come along with that. Your learning was going very well academically. You're very, you've always been very smart, very capable of learning anything that you put your mind to. But I feel like, from my perspective, it feels to me like Baystate kind of gave you a little bit maybe of an added like motivation. Would you?
Yeah, it kind of acts as almost like a force multiplier because it's.
So what? Hold, what's a force multiplier for those of us uninitiated to physics? What's a force multiplier?
It's not really. I'm not even using it as a physics analogy. It's just like it gives you direction essentially. It's school without the school.
Yeah.
There's not really any stress, and you just kind of say, okay, I want to learn X today, and you learn it.
Yeah. And I remember at the beginning, I hope it's okay to talk about this. You were about a week into coming here.
Yep.
You hadn't been in a school classroom in a decade.
Yeah.
And you said to me, "I don't know why, but I'm feeling incredibly anxious. The kids are great. The teachers are great. The school is great, but I'm still incredibly anxious. Why am I so anxious?" Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And how did that get resolved?
It just kind of went away.
Like, why, I guess?
I mean, I'm guessing just because I got used to it. It was a change in environment.
Yeah. So just like in our last conversation, Sam was saying that he kind of didn't want to go here. It was going to be a change. So this for you, it was a change, right? And
yeah.
Maybe you looked at it differently from the way that Sam did because of your life before that, but it was still a change where you had to get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the same time, you were like, "I love the classes. I love, coming there and stuff like that."
I mean, I've started a class since I came here. They didn't originally have geology here, and now we have geology here because I asked for it.
That is amazing. So, I mean, I just want to take and think about that for a minute. The idea that like a student can say, "Hey, you know what? You know what's really missing from my education? It's this. I need geology. Can I please, can you guys help me work out how to get geology?" And they did.
Yeah.
And you are taking a geology class.
Yep.
Just wicked cool. My mind is going in 3 different directions at once, so I'll ask a completely different question, which is, what's your favorite thing about Baystate?
I mean, it's probably just the freedom that you get from it, because I mean, like, I know I and my mom and, like, Sam have all said this, like, 12 times. It's really just freedom is the only thing that's been added to the equation, essentially. And I guess not the only thing. The other thing, really, is that people, when you're in, from what I remember about school, when you're in school, people treat you like you're dumb, basically.
They treat
you like you don't know, like you don't even really have the capacity to learn. Like you're kind of having just stuff just jammed into your head. against your will, which is very much true because you don't
have a choice.
Yeah.
So I want to look at that a little bit more. Yeah, I want to look at that a little bit more. You described it once to me as teachers and students here are equals.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I said, in school, like, the students are the lesser and the teachers are the greater. Here, it's just kind of like, okay, we're all, like, literally this, one of the teachers here, Jack, he has, like, he has a degree in, like, computer science. He's really good with math. He takes care of, like, a lot of that kind of stuff. He teaches science, etc. Until he started working here, he had no idea what a makerspace was or how to run it. He's now pretty much one of the experts in the makerspace because he's just been kind of learning along with everybody else.
Oh my god, that is so cool. So it's like the adults are learners too.
Yeah, right? Essentially.
I just want to say this. So we are we're in the workshop.
Yep.
Workshop. And this is this cool place where there's like all kinds of, there's a whole side of it that's called scrap electronics with like old laptops that can be, you can take parts from it, electronics to be scrounged. There's a gardening supply area in here. There's all kinds of cool stuff. We are underneath the auditorium, and the auditorium is currently being worked on. So if you're hearing hammering or, stuff like that, that's why. And I do apologize for that. This was our place to record, and it's a pretty cool place. It's actually really cool in here. There's like some amazing tools and stuff like that. So Jack and the other teachers don't say to you, listen, I know everything and I'm going to impart my knowledge to you, and then you're going to be able to take that knowledge and go out into your life and be successful.
No.
It's like the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much like if Jack is in the makerspace, he's usually making something to like help modify his skateboard.
Awesome.
And if somebody like needs help with something, then he'll just kind of put that down for a minute and help you out, and then go back to doing whatever he's doing.
Yep. And what is the makerspace again?
The makerspace is basically a it's pretty much it's literally just kind of a lab where you can just kind of make whatever. It's got like a 3D printer. It's got a bunch of just like craft materials like popsicle sticks, glue, whatever, for just if you want to like make something like that. It's got circuit boards, Arduinos. If you've ever heard of Raspberry Pis, then you can mess around with those. Just for those who haven't, a Raspberry Pi is essentially like a small, very cheap little computer, essentially, that you can just buy and modify the heck out of.
Wow. What can you make a Raspberry Pi do?
Anything. Like literally.
What's one example? Because I don't even have a vision of this. I've never heard of this thing.
A game emulator, just a small handheld computer, a calculator, a
word processor.
Jack is currently using one to make something that like lights up his skateboard with a motion sensor, so that when he does like a kickflip or something, it lights up in a specific pattern.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
They're incredibly versatile.
Yep.
Actually, no, he's not using a Raspberry Pi for that, but he's using an Arduino, which is another thing that I think goes into Raspberry Pis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you used that word before too, and I didn't know what that was either. So Arduino.
It's just like a little circuit board that does just about whatever you want it to.
So it sounds like there's a lot to love about this place. It's an absolutely amazing place where kids, students, teenagers can come and they can learn right alongside adults who are also incredibly knowledgeable, but also come to approach teaching with a like, we're all in this together kind of attitude.
Yeah.
Right. Would you say that? I'm just trying to kind of rephrase your favorite thing, which to me it sounds like your favorite thing is that you're on an equal footing.
Yeah.
With everybody.
Yeah.
And nobody gets to say to you, hey, I know more than you, so you should listen to me. It's like you can say to somebody, well, you know more than me, so can you teach me?
Yeah.
But it's not the other way. It doesn't work the other way.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Any last thoughts on Baystate or, your time here or anything like that?
Nothing really specific, just yeah. It's a really great place.
Cool. I'm now hearing a drill.
Yeah.
Are you hearing? I have the headphones on and I'm hearing that really, really loud. So, it seems to me like it's a place where you have kind of found yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah. And remembered, like, I don't know, cool stuff about learning.
Yeah.
And like what life is for, Cool. All right. Well, Max, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. I think your story is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. So
yeah,
thank you very much.
Yep. No problem.
Thank you so much for listening today. It really means a lot to me that you are here and that you care, and that you are hearing these fantastic ideas for how to reach your teen. And if you have got a teenager who is withdrawn, anxious, defiant, or sneaky, and you just don't know how to reach them, go to morethanjustaschool.com for the 5 ways to reach your teen checklist and video guide. Our theme music today was written by REM and Green Day and performed by my son, Maxwell Culp. The amazing origami dragon in our podcast art is by Liberated Learner and Northstar member Ernie Kim. I've got a special thanks today to our producer, who's my husband, Benjamin Culp. He's a fabulous producer who makes this podcast sound amazing. Special thanks also to the teachers and staff at Baystate Learning Center, where the days are so great there that I'm recording this in July, and in summertime, my boys are just pining for September. I mean, they do not know what to do with themselves. It's like the exact opposite of what a typical kid is. Kids are like, yay, it's summertime, and don't want to go to school. And in our house, it's been the exact opposite this year. It's been so funny. Special thanks to everyone in the Northstar model, all the teachers and staff and volunteers and board members and families. You are making a wonderful difference in the lives of so many young people, our sons included. And next time, we are going to talk to, finally, the director of BSLC. His name is George Popham, and he started this school 4 years ago. It's this learning center 4 years ago after studying under the people who in the Northstar model. So there's a guy named Ken Danford, and Joel Hammond is another guy, and George really imbibed those lessons and has taken them and built BSLC on those principles and those tenets. And next week, you get to hear from him about how, about why it works so well. I mean, I've had a couple of conversations with George, and so there will be more coming from him as well. And I'm just so excited to bring you this so you can really hear from the mind of the creator of this school. All right, be sure to tune in, and thanks again so much for listening today. We will see you next time.